Today, we're going to be talking about automation with generative AI on ServiceNow. Um, this is a chance for us to talk about what is the broader kind of ecosystem that we're playing in here when we talk about these technologies, but also how we can make them very valuable in an applied sense when we pull together the data richness and the workflow engine that is ServiceNow, um, together with the capabilities of generative AI um, to do incredible things, honestly, with the data that we have, and help power outcomes that weren't possible, honestly, a few years ago. So we're looking forward to getting into it with you. And I'm going to hand it to Kyle to run through some talking points and some slides starting off. But I'll be back here in a little bit to do some demo-y things and walk through some of this in the platform and show you guys some of the use cases that we found really valuable with some of our customers. We're all from RapDev, which is an elite partner with ServiceNow. And we've done a lot of work in this space across quite a few customers, across a bunch of industries. And we're looking forward to running through this with you today. Along the way, we'll have some polling questions. Feel free to drop any questions that you have in the Q&A as well. And we'll be answering those as we go. So let's get into it. So first off, we have just quick intros. I'll do this and then hand it to Kyle. My name is Matt Morris. I'm a solutions engineer at RapDev, and my role is really about helping other users of ServiceNow to map capabilities that are in ServiceNow and sometimes that are in other tools that they might use to valuable outcomes that they want to be able to get to, and how we can make that possible by leveraging technology in an applied way. And so that's my role. I'll hand it to Kyle to take us away.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm an engineering manager at RapDev, and I handle a lot of the things on the post sales side of the company. Very delivery focused and fitting these puzzle pieces into the right places for customers. But yeah, let's see what's on the next slide for us. We've got to flash some of these accreditations here. Elite partner. Very nice customer satisfaction score. Go ahead, keep going to the next slide. And just a quick glance at some of the logos that we work with. There's quite a few more, but all right, let's proceed. So I get to take you through the warm up before the real work begins, which is what Matt will take you through. So let's get the juices pumping. I'm a huge advocate of communicating to fully understand the utility of technology, right? So as engineers, playing with the bright and shiny things is fun, yes, but we must understand that the technologies, or what the technology's utility is, what its optimal function is, what it can be applied to. If we don't know the optimal application of a technology, then in our world, it turns into shelfware, right? So we're going to get into what this stuff is, and then chat about where we can best apply it, and then Matt will show us what's under the hood. So on the screen, right, you can see a lot of indication of summarization and note resolution notes generation, for example. So ServiceNow hints at some of the key low-hanging fruit use cases that we can at least start with. Summarizing text, generating text, putting text into a variety of records, KB articles, incidents, changes, whatever, generating code, generating entire flows. And then we'll come back to this, but we're going to talk about what other use cases we can all attack with these tools in order to get optimal value, right? But for now, go ahead and go to the next slide for us. Let's take a look at where ServiceNow is building the skills and for which products. You can see it again, right? In the skills lane, there's a lot of indication of summarization of text and generating text, but there's a special one there under the Now Assist for ITOM section, right, alert analysis, starts to hint at, what's more than just summarization and text generation, and maybe gathering data from multiple sources and outputting something special for another skill, or a human to do something with it. Um, and then, this slide's really cool because it shows what the platform capabilities are, and the BYOM, bring your own model, integrating with external models, all possible in Now Assist, or with Now Assist. But yeah, let's go to that next slide. I want to flash a couple of important tools that are on their way to the platform, because it's really important, because of the Gen AI output is only as good as, one, the model, and then two, input to the model. So if the input has more relevant data, with a request to an LLM, then the output should be more desirable, right? So ServiceNow is building the knowledge graph, which we're excited about because we're working with customers today to integrate with a variety of data sources, right? To improve retrieval augmented generation of RAG, which queries information from a specified vector database, which is already taking care of the heavy lifting, right? Being fed data, generating embeddings, creating the indexes, and being there for a query when a request is sent to the LLM. More relevant data can be captured from the vector database, and can enrich the input to the LLM, getting more desirable output. So the knowledge graph is going to enable us to do those sorts of things a little bit faster, a little bit easier, by keeping data on platform, I would say, with the zero copy tech that the data fabric provides, right? Which over time should lower the cost of data management, which is like, I see it as laying the pipes for integrations between systems to share data, because it's all got to go to the same place if you're using generative AI. So lowering that cost for all of us is huge. So that's special thing number one coming down the road, which requires us to be experts in this Gen AI field if we're going to optimally reduce costs and extract value. So let's go to that next slide. And special thing number two is AI agents. So a good way to think about AI agents is like playbooks on steroids, right? They will be able to follow a desired path, execute steps in a defined process, and interact with its human counterparts when it's configured to. It could They could also be configured to interact with other AI agents. Okay, so we're talking about these things so we can start to see where we're going, right? We're looking down the road ahead of us to see the optimal application or utility of the technology. Now, here's the cool part. Gen AI, we all know, right? It can do more things than just summarize resolution notes for your incident, or generate text for your KB article, right? The real money saver is enabling the Gen AI, via the agents, to collect data, maybe analyze it, make suggestions, maybe recommend something, or create structured data to create objects right on the platform, or even if the governing protocols and guardrails are in place, make decisions on its own, or approve things, um, and invoke change in the real world by modifying data at will, uh, according to a prescribed set of rules, right? So you think about it like this: you might have a functional specification that governs what your humans can do within change management, and soon you're going to have a functional specification that governs what your AI agents can do within the change management process. And for a while, you'll have both functional specs, one for humans, one for the machines, until you no longer need one of those. And I think we all know which one will eventually no longer need. So let's go to the next slide. So this slide is special. At RapDev, we're taking customers through these phases of adoption, AI adoption, and we're partnering with ServiceNow to get us all there a little bit faster, right? So in phase one, I like to think of it as you have individual contributors who are exploring Gen AI, what it can do, and how to apply it, right? There's no real leadership driving the effort yet. And then you get into stage two, where you have a couple of senior level people who have decided, okay, let's implement some things, and you even have metrics or KPIs at this point that are actually showing some return on value. And then the inflection point starts to kick in stage three, where leadership has actually sat down and decided, all right, this is the direction we're heading. We're enabling it, we're allocating resources to it. Let's go. And this is where you start to see AI embedded into core functions, key processes, integrated with key data pipelines, and it's actually working, uh, uh, workflowing, I guess is a better way to say it. And it's affecting real change. It's modifying data in a variety of systems. That's stage three. And then stage four is our key destination, where things actually become autonomous. AI agents, LLMs, Gen AI, the systems are working together to get from point A to point B within a set of guardrails, a governing rule book, a functional specification, right? Any one of those terms will do. Set of protocols. The humans define what they're able to do, and then Gen AI go ahead and do it, just like the humans used to. So what I'd like to do now is we're going to start a poll, right? So if you go, what do we have on the next slide? Poll. So take a minute to just let us know what Gen AI adoption stage you're in, and we'll give you a few seconds. And I want to talk through, while you're doing that, I'll talk through some example use cases where we're currently starting to apply generative AI, right? So there's ticket enrichment. It's a good one, right? Summarizing text, getting data into tickets where humans no longer have to do that. Troubleshooting recommendations we're working on. Connecting with source code repositories, getting observability data, um, and then providing engineers or SREs with actual troubleshooting recommendations and being able to provide commands to run to get the next steps, to provide valuable output in a troubleshooting process. Uh, actually generating run books or playbooks. Right? Humans typically set out a string of steps within a playbook or a run book. Gen AI can do that too. So that's another key use case that we're using Gen AI for. CMDB data accuracy. Have you ever worked on deduplication? Gen AI can help out there too. Actually approving records can help out. Ticket triage. The list goes on. So, all right, what can we show the poll results? There we go. Oh, 1-4. Very nice. Right, and then we have another poll that we're going to put on. So how many use cases have you applied in Gen AI to make more efficient? Go ahead and do that. And some of the really good data sources that we are connecting with or helping customers connect with to improve the RAG is this one, first and foremost, the ServiceNow configuration data itself, the data within ServiceNow. And then there's data from external systems like observability data of the systems you're monitoring in your environment. There's source code repos, talked about that one. And then specific product documentation, right? Uh, Relating to products that you have live in your environment. So getting all of those data sources in help out the LLM output. So very good. Those are your polling results. Looks good. All right. So now what I'm going to do is hand the baton back over to Matt, so he can show us what's under the hood.
Yep. So we're going to talk about a few, tangible applications of generative AI today. And I'm not going to run through this entire scenario. So, but it is based in a scenario. And so I'm going to just briefly give you an overview of what's happening so that you can orient yourself a little bit in the scenario that we're dealing with. And then I'm going to just highlight the parts that are really focused around generative AI. And then we're going to actually build something new together really quick um, to show how quick we can go from basically 0 to 1 on a use case. So here we are. We have a few minutes ago, actually, I made a commit while Kyle was talking, and I was a little distracted because he's talking about all this exciting stuff. Um, I'm not really sure if I made good code changes or bad ones. Unfortunately, I made a mistake, and that is going to cause some breakage in a website that we have where normally it would recommend, it's like an e-com thing. So normally it would recommend like other products that you might want to shop for. And unfortunately, I broke that. So now at the bottom of the page, it just says like other stuff you might like. And then there's nothing there. So all of our monitoring tools are going to notice this from varying kind of aspects. And we're going to see that stuff flood into ServiceNow. There's some features in ServiceNow that are not generative AI focused that are built around trying to help pull together multiple symptoms of the same issue, which might be called alerts, into one group. And so we're going to show kind of how does that happen. In parallel, we had some automation that was registering a change request into ServiceNow for the code change that I made, right? And it brought in actual details of the code that I changed using another one of ServiceNow's products. We're going to be able to leverage all this data to help us make faster decisions about how to fix this problem. Okay. So that's the context. Something's broken. Bunch of monitoring tools are noticing. ServiceNow already knew there was a code change that happened. And we're going to jump into what does that look like in terms of how we can fix that. And then once we just walk through a little bit about how GenAI can help us to fix that more quickly, we'll come over to another area and we'll work a little bit on, so then what do we do from there in terms of if we want to extend that a bit, okay? So if I'm a developer, one of the things that is a RapDev kind of element of our ethos is that we like to meet people where they are and the tools they're comfortable in. So a lot of the incidents that we run and a lot of like when we implement this for customers, we're running incidents out of chat tools like Teams or Slack. In this case, I have a new Teams channel that popped up. So if I'm a developer, I might not even be in ServiceNow. I might not even know about anything else that's happening. What is all the underlying data? Um, for people who are used to ServiceNow, they can be in there. That's fine. But if I'm a developer and maybe that's not my everyday tool that I'm using, then this is an opportunity for me to be brought into that kind of shared context that we can all have, right? And so we get an initial message here that says there's an incident, right? I'm going to open that incident up while I'm reading through this. So it's telling us there's an incident. It tells us a bunch of stuff that's like technical kind of details, right? It's like, oh, there's this metric that's not doing well. There's some impacted services. There's a group of alerts. There's all this stuff that's happening. AI helps to bring something together for us here, which is an explanation of the earliest alert that was kind of the initial problem um, from this group of symptoms, right? And so it's bringing that to us and it's saying, here's an explanation of that. The first thing that it notes is that it looks like there's a mistake in the code that's causing an infinite loop. And that means that because the code is looping there, it looks like it's running, but whenever anything tries to retrieve those recommended products, it's going to be blank. So if we look at our website real quick, for example, just to quickly highlight kind of what this looks like, you see there's this you may also like section down here. It's blank, right? That's the problem. So it tells us right here, you should probably look at the application code and figure out that logic that had a loop in it and figure out why it's endlessly looping. It's saying that as a result, we can have issues with like resource exhaustion. We maybe should have given more, um, resources to those services to be able to handle a situation like this. But it's honestly not what we wanted anyway. So it's giving us its best guess at what the problem is here. So this is a case where how we do this in short is we're pushing a bunch of context to the LLM, which is the model, the Gen AI model. We're pushing a bunch of context about the alerts that we got, the change request that was registered for the code change that was made. We push that to the LLM and we say, hey, based on all this stuff, can you help us understand an explanation of the earliest alert, right? And that's what we get back. So from here, we can start handling this issue. And I'm going to run through a couple of these things while we head on to the next thing. But I'm going to say I'll take this one. It's my own commit. I made the code change, so I'm going to do a couple of things here. We have a few different options of things that we can do. I'm going to skip past like anything else. We just do the work note on the incident. That's fine. Based on what we've seen so far, it seems likely that the most immediate thing that we should do is roll back that change that we made, that is causing the loop to happen, right? And so we can ask, and here again, we're using some AI. It's not as generative AI focused, but we're using some AI elements to help bring together what are the best actions that I could take to help respond to this. And I see the one right here that I probably want to do. So I'm going to go ahead and do that while we go, because it's going to take it probably 60 seconds to do that rollback. So I'm going to say, hey, run that rollback, which is going to fix the system temporarily while the code is technically wrong, right? The code that we stored, that we built the service on, and it's now running is wrong. But we can do a manual rollback by telling the tool that's running the service, run the last version of the service that you had before this. That's what we're doing, right? So it's a temporary, it's a Band-Aid fix, what we just did here. So it's going to roll back that deployment that we did, and it's going to put it on an old version. But that does not fix the fact that this is currently broken, right? So we'll skip through a bit of this without explaining too much more. I am going to add a problem task, which is going to put a bug in the planning tool that our devs use. So in this case, the bug will get assigned to me, and it will add a bug that says, hey, you need to go fix the code that caused this problem, right? So we do that. On the incident side, we can see how ServiceNow is pulled together. This is part of ServiceNow features we're not really going deep into today, but ServiceNow has pulled together a lot of details here for us. It's grouping together all these alerts. It's letting us see, so we can see like the alert itself. It's letting us see not only the alert that initially caused this incident, but we can also see other alerts here. So this is where we see alerts that are in this group. Got a bunch of alerts in the group coming from a bunch of different sources. That's a part of the power of generative AI, is that if I'm coming in and I'm trying to triage this issue, let's say I wasn't the dev who made the code change, then that could be really challenging for me, right? Because I wouldn't have the context of what happened. ServiceNow is helping pull all of that together for us. So the second place that we're using some generative AI is on the root cause process. So one thing we're doing here is when we look at our change requests that we have here, it's bringing in a few different change requests and it's saying, hey, it might have been caused by one of these change requests that you have that was recently done to the service that was first affected by this set of issues, right? In there, we have some additional things that we're doing to be able to bring better visibility and holistic context to anyone who's looking at ServiceNow. What do I mean by that, right? In the description of the change, when this change is registered, it's programmatic. The code tool told ServiceNow, hey, there was a code change that was done, create a change request, right? ServiceNow's like, okay. The thing is, the code itself, the code changes themselves were actually sent over to ServiceNow and they're stored as part of the data model. But what if you don't read, like this, in this case, this service is written in Python. What if you don't read Python, right? The answer is easily solved by generative AI, where previously this was kind of a hard thing to solve for. Generative AI can look at exactly what was done. And we can see it says here, there was this original code. The comments are being changed here. And so it says in the original code, the infinite loop was commented out, but in the modified code, the comments have been swapped so that now it's going to put it into an infinite loop and it's going to log more errors, right? And so that is where all of this generated from. This is a powerful thing because it allows us to bring sometimes disparate parts of an organization who do entirely different functions within an organization, bring them together when they're looking at something like this. Because we might have more process-oriented people or less technical people who are looking at a change like this in ServiceNow, and they say, I don't read Python. I don't know what these code changes mean. GenAI can help us solve that problem and help break down barriers that often arise in organizations. So it's a tangible example of generative AI being useful. Um, we're going to move on because we want to get to the part where we're building something. You notice when I clicked over, my website is somewhat dynamic, so it actually refreshed and brought in those recommendations because I did that rollback. But you remember that was a band-aid. So we're gonna deal with the real fix later. Um, and right now we're just doing a band-aid fix. What we want to do next is we actually want to say, hey, I've done everything that I need to do to deal with this problem. I'm actually going to resolve this incident, right? And the reason I want to do that is because I want to get to how can we extend this a bit further to bring us more value with generative AI. So it sends us this card. It says you need to fill out what you did to fix it. So I'm going to say programmatically rolled back the code chain, or we'll say the service to an old version, created a bug for the actual code fix. I'm going to submit that. And then on the channel side, we'll see that pop up. It'll also update the incident in ServiceNow, obviously. And then we notice that we get this AI summary of what happened, right, as well in the channel. So that anybody who comes to this channel later, who might not want to read through the history of any chatter that happened if I'm collaborating with other people to solve the problem, it takes, again, the context of all of the work notes, all of the chatter in the channel, everything like that, all of the related alerts, all of those root cause pieces, pushes that to the model and says, hey, I need a quick explanation of the salient points of what happened here, right? And so this is where generative AI, you notice that there are some things that are consistent. We're not making decisions based on AI in this case. And the reason why is because there are still a lot of this stuff is still newer technology. There are cases where it's not going to produce exactly the same result every time. And so, in terms of applying this, we tend to use it more as, we could call it like using it as a mech suit versus using it as a robot to do the job for us, right? And so that's how we really see a lot of the immediate use, like the low hanging fruit of making this more useful. But now I need to jump over to what are we going to build? Because we're going to go build something now. Let's go back to our incident. And if we look at our incident, since it was resolved, it closed all those alerts, everything like that. But it also generated a post-incident report, okay? The post-incident report comes in. It looks like this, right? Is this the most useful thing? Like, it's honestly, the part that it generated is just this. It basically took the description and dumped it into the summary. And then the impact is blank because it didn't bring anything in there. And then it said, it basically just took my exact resolution note, right? And it put it into this box. What we're going to do is we're actually going to build something really quickly. So I can show you a little bit of under the hood here of how can we build something in the next few minutes here that would actually generate a really nice looking and more useful explanation of this incident and help frame up a useful postmortem for us to prevent this from happening again. Okay, so we're going to jump into that now. Please feel free to drop in questions. I know we're going kind of fast, but I want to make sure we get through to the end of building the flow that we want to build. So hopefully that's making sense so far. So we'll jump over. We're going to make a new flow. We're going to say generate post-mortem. Okay. So we'll say I want to build this flow. And we're going to add a trigger that happens when a new post-incident review record is created. Okay. So this flow is basically just a logical progression of things that we want to do whenever this happens. So we'll say post-incident review is created, and we'll add a filter to say that the incident on the post-incident review should not be empty. We make that trigger. Now, what do we want to do every time that one of these gets generated or one of these records gets created so we can generate a nice post-mortem? So what we'll do is we have already, as a building block of that other thing I just showed you, where it spits out the summary of everything that happened, we have already something for that, which is called a incident summary, right? And so if we look back at that, that is a subflow. So we'll say incident summary. It might take a second. Let's do incident. I think it was loading. There we go. Build incident summary. So we want to build this incident summary. And what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to quickly gather all the context about the incident that we're dealing with. So we're going to just give it the incident that we want to build a summary for from the trigger of our flow, right? The next thing we need to do is we need to feed that summary context, all of that context, to a model and ask it to summarize that, right? So the summary prompt thing is just getting all of the context. Hopefully that makes sense. It's getting all of the related data, everything like that, all of the work notes, everything from teams. And what we're going to do is then we're going to get an LLM completion prompt here. And we're just going to directly take the prompt that that incident summary thing gave us, right? Hopefully this is making sense. Feel free to drop questions in if you have them as we go. And for this, I'm going to use GPT-4o, and I'll give it a little more breathing room for how much it can give me back. Okay, that's what the max tokens is for. So we'll do that. The next thing we need to do is we need to add another step that will do an LLM completion to build the HTML, because that is rich text. The field that is on the post-incident review, it's HTML. So an added bonus here is not only am I going to get a really pretty post-incident review, but also I don't have to spend any time coding HTML. Honestly, just on a personal note, I really hate HTML. And so this is like, having a robot to do the dishes or something that you hate, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. Um, I'm going to use, for this one, I'm going to mix it up a little. And this is something that's cool because by having a controller like this, where we can use multiple other models, we can easily switch to like another model. We can say, oh, I'm going to do this through Anthropic, and I'm going to give this one a good bit of response as well. But we need to figure out what our prompt is going to be. So the first thing is we need to add our incident summary, and then we're going to add a bit of context above it. So we got our incident summary from the completion that came back from step 2. And then we're going to give it a little bit of a prompt here. Our prompt, we can do this a lot of different ways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say something along the lines of using the incident summary below, generate an incident post-mortem. Okay. And we'll say document that I can edit and publish. Yeah. And we can add a little bit more detail here. I have already my company's colors. I'm going to say provide it in HTML. We'll say RapDev's colors are, and I have those already from another project that I was working on. I also need an image that I can use, like if I want to give it an image. So you just upload whatever images you have, and you can put those easily into ServiceNow. So use the RapDev logo as needed, and we'll give it an example. I don't want it to be that big, maybe like 150. And then I cheated a little bit on this because I asked an LLM before this. I said, hey, give me tips for how to make a nice, professional, polished HTML document, right? And so it actually gave me some really useful tips that we can use. And I'm just going to drop in those tips here as well, so that we have those, so that we get back something that has, and you'll notice we can scan through a little of what this is doing. It's saying make the document look professional and polished. Let it begin with a brief table of basic details about the incident. Design tips is giving tips about typography, spacing, etc. Visual, subtle separators. It's just giving it tips about like kind of graphic design types of stuff, right? Content tips. I said use context where you can. Include brief explanations. If you can add visualizations, do that, right? In this case, we don't have a ton of visualizations, but we'll add these tips. And then the last thing I said, I really want a call to action for future improvements to be included. And I said only return the HTML without any markdown formatting. So that just makes sure that it's just giving me the HTML back, right? So we'll build that. And now we need an action to update our record. So we're going to go grab update record, and we're going to get our trigger record. And we're going to update. There's this thing called edit your incident summary. And so I don't want to edit HTML directly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a quick script. This is the only scripting that we actually have to do besides using some of the building blocks that we have in here. And it's just to get, I'll explain it as I'm doing it. It's just to get the completion from there and then return only that. So it's literally just getting the completion from step 3 and then putting it directly in here without any kind of weird formatting or anything like that. So we do that, okay? So let's save this. And now what we want to do is we actually want to test it. So we have our post-incident report over here. You remember what it looked like, right? It was basically just, I can click edit here so you can see exactly what it looks like. It's basically just this kind of blob of text, bunch of stuff that was copied from the incident. Impact is blank, and then it took my resolution note, right? It's not good enough for prime time, right? And this is a building block that ServiceNow provides that we can take and, in the past we might have developed a bunch of HTML or something like that. What we're going to do instead is we're going to now run a test on this incident and see how this works out. And hopefully it's pretty good. If it needs a lot of tweaks, then we might not have a lot of time to mess with it today. But we are going to go ahead and grab the incident number and we'll do a test on it and see if we can find that. So it found that that record for the post-incident review. And you can see there's no cheating here. The edit your incident summary thing is that exact thing, right? It's kind of basic, kind of plain text, not a lot of formatting or anything like that. So we'll say, hey, let's run the test. And we'll give that a minute to complete. And then we can see kind of how did that HTML come back and get populated into that post-incident review. It usually takes a little bit of time when we're interacting with multiple models like this. We have a few steps in here, but you think about how long would it take to write HTML for something like this, how much that would cost the organization in terms of the time that we have to spend on stuff like that. And as Kyle mentioned earlier, there's definitely a very, very strong case to be made for the value that can be achieved with generative AI when we don't just use it for summarizing things, or we don't just use it for, kind of these basic tasks, but we actually, and it says it completed. So let's go check out our post-incident report now. Oh, so now we have a RapDev logo. It actually generated some sections here. It looks like it's not perfect in this. I don't love the text. I think some of the text might have gotten wiped out in the, so I'll make a note for it to do like a different color of text. Some of the text is not perfect. I think part of this might be because the way that ServiceNow handles the theme. Let me try switching to light mode and see if that looks better. Yeah, that's a little better. So we can kind of see how did it spit out like different sections. It gave us a very nice description. It's doing even some little emojis in here, right? And we can iterate from here to get more dividers. We can give it different tips of how we want to. We can run a few examples of this and then just take the HTML and make it our standard. But it gives us a timeline of what happened. It gives us a root cause analysis, right? And it tells us, hey, there were a couple of change requests that were identified as possible root cause. The resolution steps, it says we implemented a temporary workaround. We adjusted some alert thresholds based on the context that it got from some of our alerts that came in, and we optimized the performance. and ultimately got to a place where we could fix those other alerts. The incident resulted in some issues on a couple of our services. And it says our exact metrics are to be determined. Lessons learned. It tells us, hey, this is important to have robust monitoring, quick identification, rollback strategy is key. And it tells us some next steps. So it even gives us some tips. It says, hey, if you want to contribute to this, and this part down here, the timeline, this is ServiceNow's out of the box thing. But it says, if you want to contribute, please contact the DevOps team at devops@rapdev.io. And it even gave us some next steps here of things that we could do to help prevent this from happening again. So hopefully this has been helpful. We're coming up to the end of our time, and we've made it just in time. But like I said, if we run this a few times and we see maybe some slightly variant versions of this that we see we like one of them a lot, we could take the HTML that it built, which if we look up here, we can see how complex some of this is. And if we click code, you can see it actually wrote the HTML code for this. This is where we can easily take something like this and turn it into a template that can be used for any PIR that gets created. And that way we have a repeatable and nice and polished example of how to make that happen. So with that, we will see if there are any other open questions. Anybody who wants to hang around for a few extra minutes, feel free. But that essentially marks the end of our presentation today, and we're happy to
Yeah, and
hang around for a little while.
I'll close out with a statement here. Of course, you'll get the um, recording of the webinar afterwards. But what's important here is, um, some people out in the world are catching their own rockets out of midair right now, right? And we're just on the precipice of figuring out how to apply generative AI across our business. Um, we we have to speed this up, and the way we speed up adoption is by talking about it. So get out there, share the webinar, communicate with other people about this stuff at work. Find out which side of the equation you fall on. If you're an individual contributor, talk about it more, right? Get people engaged. Show the value at work, what it's accomplishing, what you can do with it. If you're a decision maker at work, start listening to the people who are getting things done across the org and already returning value with Gen AI. So it takes all of us, and we just got to talk about it more and work on these use cases together. There are so many things that we can make faster and that we can optimize with Gen AI. So let's go. We're ready to help.